How many people can say that they use their credit to make over $1 million? I'm referring to your credit score. And your credit score, it's an asset. And it's an asset that you can use to make money. So it's really good to keep your nose clean and have a good credit score. And if you don't have a good credit score, let me show you how to lock one in. Today, I'm going to share with you 7 strategies for building up your credit score.
One shot, now the future is yours. Go!
All right, today we're diving into the world of a credit score. And for most people, a credit score is used for qualifying for a house or a car or something else where someone wants to know, are you a credit-worthy person? Like, do you have a history of making good financial choices or bad financial choices? A credit score is a 3-digit number that reflects your credit worthiness. It provides lenders and financial institutions an assessment of how likely you are to repay loans and debts in a timely manner. A credit score is based on your credit history, which includes information such as the number of accounts that you have, the total debt levels that you have, repayment history, other factors. And ultimately, the score basically helps someone determine, it's like, wow, do you have too much debt and are you able to service your debt? Have you ever been late on your debt? Did you get a bankruptcy? All of these different factors can bring your scores up or down, but ultimately that 3-digit number is what companies have in their online system to determine whether they will or will not extend credit to you. The most common credit score model is the FICO score, which ranges from 300 to 850, with higher scores definitely meaning more credit worthy. So there are 3 different organizations that will give you a credit score. One of the 3 is called Experian, and they reported last year that the average American has a credit score of 716. And so you're like, okay, if 850 is the high and 300 is the low, what's average and what's good? Well, I can tell you right now that if you want credit lended to you on a vehicle or on a home, often they're going to look for a credit score around 680, 700. A lot of organizations say that anything over 700 is really good. You know, if you're 660 to 700, you're okay. When you get in the low 6s, it gets very difficult to start qualifying. If you have a number that starts with a 5 or anything lower, your credit is not good at all. Now, before we talk about the 7 things that you need to improve your credit score, let's just make sure you understand the different factors that affect your credit score. First of all, these are really high impact. Your repayment history, your timely payments of bills and debts, that's a really big deal. Like if you are late on a payment and that gets reported to the credit bureau, that's gonna hit your score really, really hard. As in like, you never wanna be late. Like every couple years, something happens in my household where my wife says, this is weird. I didn't see this in the mail. Did this get paid? And all of a sudden, like I bristle hard and I'm like, find out, because if it wasn't paid and it was reported to the credit bureau, that can majorly tank your score. So it's not like you're late 10 times or 100 times. You're late 1 time and they're like, there's like no forgiveness on this. You are busted. Another factor is called debt utilization. Basically, I have a $10,000 line of credit on my credit card and they're curious, how much of it are you using? Are you keeping a really high balance where you're always maxed out at $10,000? They're gonna frown on that and they're gonna lower your credit score. Also, if you never use it and you have it available, that can also hurt your credit score because they're thinking, why would you have credit that you don't use? Now, your debt utilization isn't just on a single line of credit. They'll also take an aggregate of, oh, they got 5 credit cards with a $10,000 limit on each of them. So they have $50,000 that's extended to them. And here's the magic number. You never want to use on average more than 30% of the debt load. If I have a $10,000 credit card, I might use up to $3,000 and keep a balance of $3,000 or less. It doesn't mean that you can't max out the card, but it does mean that when it's time to actually pay your bill, you want to pay it at least down to $3,000. If you're keeping a balance higher than that, it's going to start negatively affecting your score. Now, there's one more thing that's really going to have a negative impact on your credit score that you want to be aware of. It's called derogatories. Derogatory marks such as collections, public records on bankruptcy, civil judgments, tax liens, all of those things are going to destroy your credit. Like, I'm just gonna tell you right now, like a bankruptcy can last for 10 years on your credit score. Or if you have a foreclosure, like I didn't actually pay my mortgage and my house went back to the bank, that can sit there for 7 years. Which means that for the next several years, if you wanna do something really simple like, hey, I'm just trying to like switch companies on my cell phone plan and they run your credit, they might deny you. Now, not everything causes a really high impact on your credit score like repayment history, debt utilization, and derogatory. You also have medium impact, and that's for the length of credit history. In other words, the longer your credit history is, generally the more favorable it is. For example, I remember when I got my very first mortgage, I had a credit card for like 2 years prior, and then 6 months later, I opened up 2 more lines of credit because one of my coaches said, Kris, a bank typically wants to see you have a minimum of 2, but preferably 3 lines of credit when you're actually establishing your history. So I went and hurried and got a couple more credit cards, and he basically said, more or less keep these paid off, use them and pay them off. You want to show the credit bureaus that you're responsible, that you can use your credit, but that you can also manage it well and keep it paid down. And there are a couple of things that have low impact on your credit score. One of those is total accounts and different types of loans. For example, a mix of credit card types like credit cards, installment loans, car loans, revolving lines of credit, things like that. Now let's talk about what has a low impact on your credit score. And it has to do with the total number of accounts and the different types of accounts that you have. Generally, the more you have, it shows the credit bureaus the more financially responsible you are if you're using them the right way. So if you have a mix of credit card types, for example, credit cards, but also installment loans. You might also have student loans and you're paying those over time, and it's reported that you're making your payments, or that you have a mortgage and you're making those payments, or that you have a revolving line of credit and you might use it, but then you keep it paid down responsibly. All of those things are going to help build your credit score. And then the last thing that you want to be aware of, it's what is called a hard inquiry. My wife and I, shortly after we got married, were like, oh my gosh, did you know that when we go to a store and we sign up for their credit card, they'll give us like 10% off or 20% off our purchase? And something was happening on this one week where we had a lot of purchases to make. And we opened like 7 credit cards and we got all this in-store credit and we got these perks. And I remember that I went to go apply for one of my next houses and they said, you've got like, your credit score dropped 40 points in hard inquiries. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? Each hard inquiry can literally take 3 to 7 points for the next 90 days off your credit score. So if you start shopping around at banks and getting credit cards and applying for credit cards online, that's seen as risky behavior because they're going to say, whoa, you're trying to get too many lines of credit in too short a period of time, and everyone keeps dinging your credit wanting to know if you have it. That's kind of risky because if I lend you money, how do I not know that you're going to go right down the street to the next vendor and try to hit them up for money as well? That's temporarily going to hit your credit score too, because we don't want to see that you're desperate for credit like crazy. Now, there are 7 different strategies that we're talking about today for how you improve your credit, but I want you to understand credit is not just used for things like buying a vehicle or qualifying for a mortgage for a house. Sometimes it's really simple, like getting the utilities turned on. Like the utility company in the city you live in says, we're going to turn on the gas or the electricity. We want to know that you're creditworthy, and if you're not, they might harass you and make it more difficult. They might ask for heavier deposits up front, and all of a sudden, it's a hardship, all because that credit score is not where it needs to be. So as a result, I'm going to share with you my top 7 strategies for things that you do to improve your credit score. The first tip is to pay your credit card balances strategically. Your credit utilization, the percentage of your credit limit that you're using, it does play a significant role in your credit score. Aim to use less than 30% of your limit on any card. The lower, the better. Additionally, pay down balances before the billing cycle ends. So instead of paying when the payment is due, pay it before the statement ends, because that is when the credit card reports your balance to the credit bureaus. Also, you can make multiple payments throughout the month, and all of these things do is basically show the bank and the system that you're using your credit responsibly. This also means that if you're trying to eliminate debt and you've got one maxed out card and then you got one half paid off, the question is, should you just get the half paid off one paid off first because it's higher interest? Well, that might come at a cost. You might first want to take the higher balance and pay it down so you get both of them as close to 30% as possible, even if it costs you a little bit of extra interest, because what that's going to do is that's going to get the bank saying, you're keeping your limits close or below that 30% limit again. We're not going to hit your credit scores negatively. Number 2, pay your bills on time. I cannot stress enough that you have so many bills every single month. And so over the course of the year, you might be paying hundreds of bills. And if you miss one of them once that reports on your credit, it is going to be bad news bears. Your payment history is crucial. Late payments can significantly impact your score. Set calendar reminders to get your bills paid. Better yet, just set them up for automatic payment and automatic withdrawal. But I'll tell you where I've gotten in trouble before is I've set it up on auto pay, and then for some reason, the system goes down and what I thought was being paid is no longer being paid. So you probably want to have whoever's in charge of that have a system for just double checking so that even if it's on auto pay, it's confirmed and you know all my debts are being paid timely and even a little bit early. Number 3, you need to dispute credit repair errors. It's common for you to send a payment in and for some reason the bank to say, we didn't link it up with the proper account, so we showed that you were late. And then by the time we sent you the notice and then you got back in touch with us, you were already 30 days late. And you know what's worse than being late for one day, which by the way is bad, is when they say you now have a 30-day late. And then if you're 60 days late, you have a 60-day late and there's a 90-day late. And when you go a month or 2 months or 3 months and you're still late, that also has a really negative impact on your credit. So if you were ever mistaken for being late when you in fact weren't, what you can do is file a dispute and say, hey, the company messed it up and they reported it wrong. And you work with them to basically say, hey, let's get this figured out because I don't want my credit score to drop 50 points when you claim I was late when I actually made my payment responsibly. Number 4, every 6 to 12 months, you should call up every one of your credit cards and you should ask for higher limits. So for example, I have a $3,000 line of credit and I called up the bank and I said, hey, I want to increase my credit limit. And then they ask you a trick question. They say, what would you like to increase it to? And I hate answering that question because if you say $10,000 and they were going to give you 8, they will deny 10,000. So I always say, write this one down, whatever you're willing to give me. And so they'll just put in for a max request and then I will get usually whatever that amount is. My $3,000 might go up to $4,400. It might go up to $44,000. The good news about having higher credit limits is the higher the credit limit, this is how you start getting into the really high credit scores because the credit bureau associates people that have bigger lines of credit with greater levels of responsibility. So for example, if I have a $100,000 line of credit on this card and $50,000 on this card and $80,000 on this card and $20,000 on that card, it's like I got a couple $100,000 there. And because I use them very, very little, the banks basically say, wow, like this guy has impeccable credit history. Look at all the companies that are willing to give him all this credit, but he's so responsible with it. Let's bump up his credit score over 800. Now you might be watching this and saying, hey, but what if my credit is not that great? You're gonna love this next tip. Become an authorized user of someone else's credit card. That means someone else that's creditworthy, see if you can contact the company and actually get added to the card. Now you'd have to have a special relationship with them being your friend or family or something, because what'll start happening is if you get added to the card, then as responsible as they are with the card, will actually get reported to your credit bureau that you're also responsible with the card. Bottom line, a positive payment history sets you up in a really good way. Now I want to just pause this video for just a quick minute to talk about one of the ways that I use credit for making loads of money. The first house that I ever bought, I bought at $40,000 below market. That only worked because I had credit that I could use. And so 2 years prior, I was getting multiple credit cards. I was keeping my nose clean. I was keeping my debts paid down. And it was hard to qualify for that first mortgage, but I did in fact get it. And the moment I signed on the dotted line, my net worth increased $40,000 and I rented out the basement that also paid my mortgage for me. So basically buying a house put me in a stronger financial position than when I was just renting. A year later, because my credit was good, I went back to the bank on that house and said, bank, look at all the equity in this house. And they gave me a line of credit, a home equity line of credit, a HELOC. A year after owning that first house, I went back to the bank and I said, bank, look at all the equity I have in this house. And they said, would you like to get a HELOC, a home equity line of credit? This is a revolving line of credit tied to some of the equity in the house. My first line of credit was for like $18,600. And they basically said, here's like a credit card and a checkbook that is tied to the equity. I qualified for that, not just because I had equity, but because I was credit worthy. I used that money as a down payment to buy my next house. I used my credit also to buy that next house. And that next house, I did a lease option. The family gave me thousands of dollars up front, and after they covered the mortgage, there was $600 left over every month. So I was living for free in my first house. I was getting paid $600 a month on my second house. Neither of those deals happened without me having credit. So you might be wondering, is like, Kris, what's the big deal on having a high credit score? It's like when it comes time for you to take the next step in your life to becoming financially responsible, like buying investments, buying homes and things like that, you're gonna need credit to do some of those things. Number 6 is to get a secured line of credit, a secured credit card. This is for people maybe that have lower credit scores. If you're starting the game with a lower than average credit score, you're gonna find that if you apply for credit cards online, you're gonna get denied. But you can apply for a secured credit card. And basically this is a company that says, this person needs a line of credit. They have some credit worthiness issues. Let's help them restore their good credit. What we're gonna ask them to do is to say, here's a credit card with a $500 limit, and we need you to give us $300 in order to get this card. And what they're basically saying is, hey, if this person screws up and they're late, at least we collected some of the money that we need up front. And so it's gonna cost you more dearly, but then you get a chance to prove yourself and use that credit, and it's a road back to establishing good credit again. My 7th tip is to make sure that you have more than 1 or 2 credit cards. You want to actually get a mix of credit cards and types of credit. So for example, I have people that will come to me and say, Kris, I've got $50,000 student loan and I finally just sold my house and I came into 70 grand or I inherited money. Should I pay off my student loan debt? And first of all, I say no. As an investor, use that money as a down payment to buy a house that is an asset that makes you money that will then pay off your debt for you. Because if all you ever do is service and pay off your debts, you're never going to get anywhere. Well, also by holding on to the student debt, you're maintaining a revolving line of credit. And that's just a mix in the game of having different lines of credit, like my home equity line of credit, or like having my vehicle that I make monthly payments on, different than a credit card that I can pay up and pay down and pay off or max out. And so having a mix of these different types of vehicles and having several of them, that will also help you keep your ratios in check and also help you build credit real strong. Listen, if you want more of this in your life, make sure you keep your credit score on the up and up. If you have bad credit, make a commitment to work with a credit repair company. There's so many of them out there. Use their services for the next several months to build your credit back up, because a time's gonna come when you're gonna need your credit to help you make some kind of investment or lifestyle choice or move your life forward. Today's video is not just for consumers that are trying to increase their lifestyle with having a good credit score. It's also for the investors out there that want to get ahead of the game and want to retire early. And if you're a subscriber of mine, you're like, Kris, I love watching your content. Thank you for what you're financially teaching me today. I have a special offer for you. When was the last time you sat down with a multimillionaire to get a custom game plan to financially elevate your life? Your credit score is a factor, but there's so many others, like what's your job and career status, and how are you doing on saving money? Are you getting ahead or are you falling behind? Are you deeply in debt? Are you trying to get it paid off? You provide me that information, and in turn what I can do is show you step by step what I would do to get out of debt and to start building your assets so that you can retire early. If that's important to you, click the link below and request a free game plan. It doesn't cost any money, but what you're gonna get is a very fresh and different perspective from how most people think about money. Your friends, your family, the people that you get financial advice from, I'm just telling you, they usually have the worst advice. It's like crabs in a bucket, everyone to keep each other in the exact same position. But for you to financially get ahead, you have to do things different, because better is always different. So if you're looking for a game plan to elevate yourself financially beyond just improving your credit score, click that link below, get with me and my team. I've trained them how to give you a custom Kris Krohn game plan on exactly what I would do if I were in your shoes to get ahead. Kris, thank you for the video, but I want to invest in real estate and I don't have good credit and it feels like it's going to take forever to fix my credit. I want you to also know that I almost never use my credit in building my wealth for where I'm at these days. I love showing people how you can actually grow your assets, like buying a home, with no money and no credit. So have no fear if the credit's not where you need it to be. It doesn't need to hold you back from winning as a real estate investor. In fact, if you want me to prove it to you, click right here and let me show you a video that I made just for you, showing you how I transact real estate with no money and no credit.